All right, welcome to episode 7 of The Dreamers. We dream big, and we're bringing you guys stories of individuals who also dream big and have achieved remarkable success in their fields. I'm Munir Rahman.
And I'm Asfan Musa, and today we flew all the way to LA to bring you a special guest. Joining us today is Dr. Daniel Rafie. He is a leading expert at the intersection of sports and brain health, and he is a board-certified neurologist, traumatic brain injury specialist, a researcher, and the voice behind 2 podcasts, UCLA Brain Sport Podcast and the Better Brain Podcast.
And from working with NBA athletes and professional boxers, he is leading research on CBD and concussion recovery to empowering brain and performance through innovation. Dr. Rafie's journey reflects passion, purpose, and relentless curiosity for the brain's potential.
We're honored to have you, Dr. Rafie.
Welcome.
And thank you so much for letting us use your UCLA podcast room.
No problem. Thanks, guys, for coming. And thank you for that introduction.
Was it good?
The only thing that I would say is probably, I consider myself a little bit more of a clinician rather than a researcher. I am involved in research, but I'd like to also state that I'm more clinically oriented rather than research oriented.
For sure. Thank you for correcting me.
A great intro, though.
Hey, appreciate it.
Outside of that, you guys are doing awesome. The way that I found out about you guys is through our mutual friend, Aaron, who you had on your pod. I loved what you guys were doing. Yeah. And I also love kind of the purpose behind why you're doing what you're doing. You're clearly passionate about what you're doing, and I can't help but gravitate towards that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think we'll start for the first question. I want to talk about your path into medicine. I feel like you trained all across the country. You went from the Caribbean to New Jersey to UCLA. Where sparked your initial interest in medicine and more specifically neurology?
Medicine specifically came from, shadowing physicians and seeing the kind of care that you could provide. So I wanted to go into something that was high level, kind of top notch, kind of like a pressure cooker environment, but that I could also be able to help people in. And there's not a lot of, things that, balance those two different aspects like medicine does. Yeah. Right. Like, for example, I would argue, being on Wall Street, super high pressure. How many people are you actually helping?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, medicine might be a good choice for that. So I started shadowing different physicians and different specialties. I really enjoyed what they were doing and also the breadth of what you could do in that environment. Right. So you could do medicine, surgery, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me explore this a little bit further. I really liked it. And then, I ended up going to medical school. Okay. So Caribbean story. Yeah. I'm sure, might as well jump into that. So I got waitlisted at different medical schools, DO schools. I thought, I just want to get the process going. So I thought going to the Caribbean would be a good idea.
So you didn't take any gap years?
No gap year.
Okay, so you were straight into it.
Yeah, it was straight into it. And that's a good question. Like looking back on it, do I wish I would have taken a gap year? And I tell everybody yes. I really wish that I would have had that gap year experience to travel and to gain a more fuller understanding of what life entails.
Yeah. And it's also because of the hard long years of medical training.
Right. 4 years straight into it.
But we can look at it you just get to have a bunch of fun before medical school. But I really think that if you take advantage of that gap year to really broaden your horizons, you can really bring that enhanced perspective into your medical training and eventually into you becoming a doctor. Yeah. Right. If you use it to travel, to meet different people from different backgrounds, and you can see, everyone's experience is completely different based off of where they live, based off of how they're raised. Yeah. That really influences not only your personal understanding of life, but then also, how you practice medicine and how you conduct your business.
And I believe students compared to when you were graduating from college and everything else, it was a norm of going straight into medical school, right? But nowadays it's a norm. I think the average age that medical students go to their first year is 24.
Yeah, 24.
So that's basically 2 years, 2 gap years taken straight out of college.
So I wonder why the function of that. So certainly maybe it's people just want to take a gap year. Yeah. But also maybe it's harder to get into medical school.
Sure.
There's more spots, so people got to wait a little bit.
Competitive now. A lot of people try to take gap years to build their application stronger or do a post-grad program.
Right. Yeah. So let's circle back to Caribbean Medical School. So obviously, where I am now, I'm glad that I did it, right? I got through it and it got me exactly to where I wanted to be. But do I think it's for everybody? No. I don't think that going to the Caribbean is for everybody. Even so, like sometimes people ask me, hey, if you had to do it again, like, would you go to the Caribbean? And my sense would be, I think I'm a little bit more logical and more practical now than I was when I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
I had a bravado about me when I was 21 where it's like, oh, like, Caribbean. Yeah, of course. Like, let's just go. Let's take out all the loans. I'll get through it. I'll be fine. But looking back on it now that I'm a little bit more, experienced and logical and I have a kid of my own, I would probably say it's not a good idea. But either way, I think that it's good for certain people.
Yeah.
And people that are disciplined, know exactly what they want to do, and can structure their day and their entire next 2 years of being on a Caribbean island and having to study. If you can do that, I think, it is for you.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's for everybody. And, I had the experience of like, hey, I was able to structure my day to say, hey, I'm studying this day at this time to this time for this many days. And then I was able to find a community and a support system that was also doing that and helping me study. And we got through it no problem. But there was a lot of people that kind of fell outside of that community, that weren't able to find community, that weren't able to structure their lives, that basically came back from the Caribbean with nothing to show for it except for a bunch of loans. So again, not to say Caribbean isn't the right move. I just think that it's not the right move for certain people.
Yeah.
And it is the right move for others.
And like, did you say like your schooling over there was better or worse when you say you?
Well, I don't know what, I don't have
American
a personal
med school.
experience based off of what American medical school
but like
is.
you're just overall schooling, would you say it was like pretty good for you? Like,
I mean, we do actually have a standardized measure by which we measure medical schooling and medical education. It's called Step 1 and Step 2. And, I did very well on my Step 1, and all my friends and colleagues also did really well on their Step 1 relative to American medical students, right? So I guess that might answer your question.
Yeah.
Now, but when it comes to clinical rotations, we come back, we do rotations in the United States. What are those rotations like relative to American medical school rotations? Probably hard to tell because I don't know if the Step 2 necessarily accurately reflects people's experiences in their rotations, rather than it just reflects, how much you studied during those 2 years.
The reason why I asked that was because medical or Caribbean medical school, especially when we were in undergrad, were very frowned upon. And I feel like if you are really passionate about medicine and your grades might not be there or your like MCAT score, it is still like a viable option for you, right?
It's doable.
It's doable.
And the way you said it was the best. It may not be for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you're really committed to it and you know what you want, you're going to get through it. You're going to get it done. And we had a cardiologist for our first ever episode of the Dreamers podcast. And he had like a very similar journey to yours. He said he had other options where he could have taken a gap year, maybe like built his application stronger, but he didn't want to wait.
Right.
He wanted to go straight into it. And he's working at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston now.
Right.
Cardiologist, great, amazing person.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, there's some top level docs I know that came from the Caribbean. Yeah.
How hard was like the residency acceptance?
The match, but I mean, that's an excellent question. That's, I think, where going to the Caribbean, where, it's particularly difficult is to match to residencies. Because there's plenty of residencies that say, if you are a foreign medical graduate, we're just not going to take you. Because they have this filter out process, right? Where it's like, if you don't meet certain checks on the check boxes, then, your application goes in the trash. Yeah. So, and being a foreign medical graduate is one of those check boxes for them. But, there's plenty of other residencies that will take foreign medical graduates that are super friendly. And, I was lucky enough to obviously get in on my first time, but it has a lot, like you have to do so much more, I think, as a foreign medical graduate to get into that residency program or an American medical graduate. And it's not just a sense. It's like, that's what the stats are showing, I mean, again, it's like, there's a certain confidence and a certain bravado that I had. It was like, oh yeah, I'll go. And then I'll just do like super well on my Step 1 and Step 2s. And then like everything will be fine and dandy. Right. But looking back on that person, that was me, I was like, there's some element of stupidity that you must have had thinking that, you could like do that, right? Yeah. But I mean, that's personally, I'm not calling anybody else that goes to the Caribbean medical school stupid, but because you do have to do so much more to get into a residency position. And if you're confident enough that you can do that, then I would say all the power to you.
Amazing.
You know?
And I do feel like the confidence is important. I feel like, was there ever doubt, like, especially throughout your residency or med school, like, that this is not for me?
No, I think
You just knew what you were.
I always kind of knew once I got there that I was going to get through, and I was really determined. And I think that a lot of that discipline and determination came from my prior experience in like sports and being an athlete.
Yeah,
really helped me in that whole process of getting through medical school. And also the loans hanging over my head probably helped as a motivating factor, being like, you know, I got to get through at this point. I'm
If
like 3 years deep in loans, you know, like you got to get through it. Yeah.
Speaking of sports, what sports did you play?
Baseball, football, basketball.
Okay.
Yeah, some soccer too.
All-star
athlete right there. Yeah.
All sports. Yeah.
And was there, like, especially those sports, was there like experience that you had that drew you, would you say, more towards neurology? I know you kind of mentioned a little bit.
Yeah. So I, in medical school, I don't know. I was just particularly good at the subject of neurology. And I think that it had a lot to do with my ability to like conceptualize and kind of see things in 3 dimensions, you know, which is, you know, a key factor when you're thinking about neurology, and the brain and the spinal cord. So I knew, I was like, hey, I'm like pretty good at this. And this is also really interesting to me. I thought back then, and turns out I think I was right, that, you know, neuroscience and the brain is sort of the next frontier in medicine, especially in medical breakthroughs. So yeah, I gravitated towards that. I was like, I want to just keep doing this and explore this. So I focused my rotations around neuro. I think maybe I did like 3 different rotations in neurology during medical school. And then I decided to apply for residency.
I feel like your strong mindset, you know, neuro, everything, it makes sense. You know, it's meant to be. Yeah. I think we can move on to the next segment as well.
All right. I want to talk about like how you've worked with different types of athletes. You work with professional boxers ringside. You have worked with Los Angeles Lakers team preseason with the basketball players up there and some football players as well. Despite their different levels and settings, what common threads do you see in how athletes respond to brain trauma and recovery? That's
a good question. For brain trauma and recovery, I think most of them are resilient and determined to get back to the exact kind of functioning that they were before their brain injury. That can be great in certain circumstances, but that can also be a hindrance in others, where they're getting back a little bit too sooner than they would like. We saw this in the great example. Do you guys know who Tua Tagovailoa is by any chance?
No.
Okay, so he's a Miami Dolphins quarterback. I think last year or the year before, Miami Dolphins quarterback. Right? He falls, hits his head. And on the video, you see he clearly has a concussion.
Yeah.
But he gets pulled out. He says, "Oh no, it's just back pain. It's nothing." He even trips when he's getting up. He actually trips over himself because your balance is off after you've had a concussion, right? You might be dizzy, brain fog, stuff like that. And he even trips on the field. Everyone sees it, but it's like, "Oh, it's just back pain, right?" And then they let him go back in and finishes the game, plays with a concussion, crazy in and of itself. But then so what happens when you have a concussion in football is you have to go through something called concussion protocol, which basically, you know, takes you through a rehabilitation process that lasts somewhere around a week, right? Yeah. But because he wasn't diagnosed with a concussion, and despite him having symptoms, he didn't really say anything. He was trying to kind of tough it out and play through the game. Then he doesn't get put in concussion protocol, and he plays the following week, right? And obviously still had a concussion during that while he was playing there. And then he suffers another head injury and then has a seizure on the field.
Oh, wow.
And it's like this whole big spectacle of Tua Tagovailoa having a seizure on the field, has to get like carted off and goes to the hospital. It's a whole thing. So that's sort of a circumstance of like something potentially that could have been catastrophic from this kind of super determined attitude.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes in the line, that's on the line when you talk to athletes, right? So like for Tua, he was up for a contract extension at the end of the year that year. So meaning that he had to put up some good numbers in order to get that new contract the following year with the Dolphins. And there's a lot of things like that involve salary, livelihood, scholarships that goes into why an athlete would continue playing despite their injury that you really can't blame them for.
And I want to touch back on like concussion because you kind of answered part of my next question, but want to ask, like, many people still think like, oh, it's just getting your bell rung, you know, you push through it, you'll be fine. It's just a concussion. You sleep well, you'll get back to it normally. What do you think? What do you wish every coach, athlete, or parent better understood about traumatic brain injury? Because concussion is a traumatic brain injury.
Right. Yeah, you're spot on. So concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury. There's different severities to traumatic brain injury: mild, moderate, and severe. Yeah. Concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury. So I think what people should know is, especially from a coaching perspective, is your performance goes down if you're playing with a concussion. So that's a reason to not be playing with a concussion from a performance standpoint. And then also, you know, if you're playing with a concussion and God forbid you have another one on top of that, then your rehabilitation and recovery from that initial concussion ends up being more prolonged.
Yeah.
It can last up to 6 months, even a year, even longer sometimes. I've seen up to 3 years. And I've seen people miss entire seasons and entire careers because of that decision. So I think that's really important to understand. From a athlete, parent perspective, there was like, this is ancient advice that was being given way back in the day. You have a concussion, you just stay in a dark room until your symptoms completely go away. But that is ancient advice that has been proven to actually potentially prolong someone's concussion recovery and make their concussion rehabilitation worse. What we're recommending to patients now is about 24 to 48 hours of cognitive rest. So, you know, you rest. This whole, if you want to sit in a dark room, that's fine. But 48 hours after your concussion, you need to be up. You need to be doing some sort of aerobic exercise.
Okay.
That's actually one of the only interventions that's been shown to improve concussion recovery time and prevent persistent symptoms after someone's had a concussion.
It's so important, like, how to take care of your mental and physical health as an athlete. I mean, we see that in LeBron James, how he spends millions of dollars every year to take care of his health. And that's why, how old is he now? Like 40?
He's in his 40s.
Right?
No? Like,
yeah.
Again, he's
still performing well.
Hey,
I mean,
that's the goal for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good.
But I think the brain is also one of the most important organs you should protect. You know, I feel like concussions in general, like I've had a couple, so you know, I feel like.
What sports did you play?
I did boxing.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
all right, cool.
Concussions, like, I was very like known, and it wasn't very taken care of, especially in my gym. So
concussions in boxing, I think, is a touchy subject.
Yeah.
I think if you did a good enough post-fight exam on most fighters that go all 12 rounds, presumably if you're doing 12 rounds, there'll be some signs that you see afterwards that indicate that they might have a concussion. I think most fighters,
even a mild concussion,
that'll be for most fighters. Sure. I would say.
Yeah.
You know, that wouldn't be good for boxing, the sport. Do I think boxing is an awesome sport? Yes, I watch it. I train boxing. I think that it gives people a great sense of community. I think it improves people's health and also gets people out of poverty. Yeah. Right?
And coming from like a sports neurologist like yourself, what do you think is a safer sport in combat sports, MMA or boxing for your brain?
That's a great question. So I think MMA people would say MMA, and then boxing people would probably say boxing, right? But I don't think we know yet. I think if you look at, so it depends what you mean. Safe from what? Safe from a concussion or safe from CTE?
CTE.
Okay, so what we're starting to find out now about CTE is that it's not just like distinct concussions that end up leading to CTE, although distinct concussions in some form or fashion contribute to someone developing CTE. Most significant, we're starting to think now, is like just these repetitive, non-concussive head injuries, right? So do you have more of that in boxing or MMA? I think if you ask anyone, and obviously logically, that's more probably prevalent in boxing, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. Is because in MMA, you get hit down, you go down, the ref stops, or like, I mean, you get knocked out, right? That's done. In boxing, you get knocked down, it's a 10-second count, you got to get back up. And most athletes do get back up because they have that, you know, maybe it could be an ego thing, but it could be also like, I'm not giving up.
Right.
So like, mixed martial arts, right? It's wrestling, striking, jiu-jitsu. So like, it's a lot of different aspects of it. Boxing, you're just getting hit on your upper torso. So a lot of head impact is already there.
Headshots, yeah.
So
that's a good point. Although something that doesn't happen in boxing that happens in MMA is like getting choked out.
Oh, you're choked out. Oh, yeah. I didn't think
like, I don't know, off the top of my head, it's a really good question. And, you know, if anyone knows watching, maybe they can put it in the comments or something. What's the percentage of MMA KOs that are chokeouts?
No.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Right.
But like so what's happening in a chokeout? It's like you're decreasing blood flow to the brain, which causes the person to pass out, right? And then after, you let go of the grip, then the blood flow resumes to the brain. And like, what's happening there during that time period of like no blood flow to the brain? Are you kidding me? Like, is there brain injury going on there? What's happening?
Do you watch UFC? Like MMA? Have you seen that one fight between Alexander Volkanovski when he was a featherweight champion of the world? He fought Brian Ortega, and Brian Ortega put him in I think it was like a guillotine choke, and his head turned purple. Everybody thought he was gonna tap out. I thought he was gonna tap out, but for some reason he got that dog and he did not tap out. Got out of it and won the fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I ended up winning the fight too. Like, as in,
incredible,
interesting. Champion. Like,
I mean,
that takes a lot.
Let me just tell you. We recorded a podcast, it hasn't come out yet, with Misha Tate. Do you know who Misha Tate is?
The UFC fighter.
Yeah, she's former bantamweight champion.
Yeah.
And we recorded with her, and after the recording, I asked her to choke me out.
Oh,
yeah, like not like totally choke me out, but like, hey, give me a little something. What I'm telling you, it was like a second of pressure, and I was like gasping. I was like, I'm done. A second. For that dude, I don't know how long Volkanovski was under that chokehold, but
10 seconds.
Oh, wow.
That's insane. That's insane. That level crazy. Of strength and resiliency to not tap out in that circumstance. I don't think people understand that.
No.
And I understand that now because I had like a female UFC fighter choke me out, and like I couldn't stand it after a second. It's crazy.
That's crazy that you work with Misha Tate on the podcast. That's our plan too. I mean, UFC and boxing.
Slowly bring on,
and we're very passionate about combat sports, so that's something we want to get into.
Absolutely. I think it's a really interesting field because of like, especially for brain injuries, it's this dichotomy of like, getting the personality and motivating factors that have to get you to that point, but at the same time, you have to be aware of when you have a brain injury and concussion and when it is that you need to step away and step back. I think that's like a particularly difficult space for a lot of these athletes.
Yeah,
100%.
And another question, I want to bring up one of your Instagram posts. I'm going to read like a caption that you posted on your Instagram.
Oh, man. Can we curse on here or no?
Of course.
Oh, shit.
So you mentioned in one of your Instagram posts that despite being surrounded by constant dopamine hits, people seem less happy than ever. You suggested this might be because our modern environment removes the pain and struggle that our brains are wired to overcome. Could you share your thoughts on how today's world of instant gratification and endless dopamine from scrolling impacts or might actually be disrupting our brain's natural need for challenge, resilience, and real life fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, for everyone listening, you shouldn't be looking for happiness. Happiness shouldn't be an end goal because you can't always be happy. Something that you can strive for is wellness, right? Which is sort of a balanced approach as to, I will be happy sometimes, I will be sad sometimes, but all the time you want to be well. You want to be able to regulate those emotions so that they don't get too out of control, and you always want to be centered. And I think that how dopamine plays into this, I recorded with Anna Lemke, who's a Stanford psychiatrist, and she does a lot of really cool dopamine work. And, with the underlying physiology of dopamine is, you have no dopamine and then you have your reward system where you have the dopamine spike. But what I don't think people understand is that there's a space in between when you're going after that reward, that there's also a mild increase in dopamine that happens there too. And that has a function, right? That function is you're getting dopamine and you're getting a little bit of reward from trying to seek that reward, right? And we talked about before the podcast about that's the important space. That's the space that you want. You don't want this reward that peaks your dopamine through the roof, right? You want the space where you have that little dopamine creep that's telling you keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And that's where, from a high level view, I think that translates to do something that you're enjoying the process, right? And that's what we talked about earlier before our recording, which was you guys enjoy doing this and you don't particularly care about the end result, although it would be nice, right? So you can keep doing it, but that's not really what you're in love with. You're in love with what we're doing now, presumably, right?
Yes.
And the kind of people that you get to meet and stuff like that. And I share that sentiment with what I do with my podcasting. So it's that space. It's the creeping up of dopamine that tells you to keep going. And because I think at the end of the day, what we know is like, if you just hit yourself too many times with this reward, right, you're not always going to get that dopamine spike, right? And the higher dopamine spike that you have, the lower your dopamine crash is going to be afterwards, right? So, and the more that your dopamine is spiking from that reward, the less it's going to go up, the more you're going to want to do it. So I think people need to be in love with the process of that dopamine creeping, where you're not getting this massive increase in dopamine and then crash afterwards. And then you need to go back to that thing because you feel that you need to get that dopamine back up. That's not the goal of life. And I think that, wellness is sort of how we bring that whole everything together to enjoy sort of the process.
And it's a good balance too. I feel like I really like that you said wellness, not just try for happiness, because you won't be happy all the time. Yeah. And I feel like dopamine addiction is a really big thing right now. Like we have like porn addiction, social media. Like I feel like in our generation, especially, so much social media access everywhere that like people are just addicted to that feeling.
So one thing that I have come to the realization of is that you need to start treating your attention like you do money in your pocket, right? Like attention is a commodity now. So people like Instagram, social media, they're grabbing your attention away from whatever it is that you should be doing at that time that actually rewards you in the long run. So if you're not studying, right, because your attention is gripped on social media, then then you can like take away the attention that you could devote to studying to be able to achieve the goal, and you're just wasting it on social media. And that's like now being translated to a commodity. Like they're starting to quantify people's attention to see how much attention can we extract and all this and all that. So I think that if people start to think about their attention as a commodity, I think that would really help you change your perspective on things. And at the end of the day, like, it's not what you think about, right, that ends up helping you become what it is that you want to be. Like you can't just like, if you sat around all day, you guys want to go to med school, right? Yeah. If you sit around all day and you think about how much you want to study and you think about how you want to be a doctor, that's not going to help you be a doctor. Yeah. Right? Like it's the doing. It's the constant doing that helps you rewire your brain to end up becoming the person that you want to become. Yeah. That's where this like manifestation stuff to me falls apart, right? It's like you can think all you want about what it is that you want to become. Your brain isn't going to wire itself because you're thinking about something over and over and over again. Your brain responds to actual demand. So you're demanding your brain to keep studying, to keep your attention, so that when you become a doctor, you're able to do that because that is required as a physician, right?
Yeah. A lot of people fail out of like entrepreneurship and businesses like this as well because they're thinking all these great things. They have amazing ideas, but they don't act on it.
There's no action on it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's one thing that I've been dealing with a lot is all these things that you think of, and there's all the reasons why you shouldn't do it or why you can't do it, right? That keep you from doing it, right? But it's just like, that's really the difference between people that end up creating something or becoming something and people that don't, I think, right? It's the people that actually end up doing it versus people that, think about, there's that, and there's that.
There's a saying, it's like you have 99 reasons not to do something. All you need is one reason to do it. Right. Yeah, it's a great saying. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing advice.
I mean, that's why it's like when you become something, he became something. It's like you're unlike the rest because you became something. Yeah. Because the rest are, thinking about reasons why they can't do it. No.
All right, let's go on.
And you did say you're more like in the clinical side, but just correct me if I'm wrong, but you did research into CBD a little bit.
Yes.
And can you describe that and like what sparked your interest in that area?
Let me see what sparked my interest in that area. This was like in residency. I forget exactly how it came up. I think Epidiolex had just hit the market for seizures. Epidiolex is cannabidiol for seizures. So I said, well, what kind of other things could CBD work for? And then, I started thinking about a lot of things. And then I got into traumatic brain injury, into this fellowship. So then I started thinking about the use of CBD specifically in the context of concussions. Started doing literature review. And I found that, cannabidiol specifically for brain injury, regardless of the source, has pretty robust and good clinical evidence for it. And specifically in a lot of the other symptoms that people tend to deal with after they've had a concussion, which involve anxiety, depression, and pain and headaches. So then we did sort of a retrospective review looking at, okay, well, like how many people are actually using CBD in our concussion group? And it was a lot. I think it was something like 20 or 30% of people that were coming in with concussion were like, hey, I've tried CBD. Now you can ask a bunch of reasons why someone would try CBD in the context of concussion. Does it work? Is it because they're curious about it? A lot of different reasons. But so there's also evidence in preclinical models that it might be able to improve a certain process called spreading depolarization or spreading depression in the context of concussion. So if you want, I can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
So spreading depression is a really cool concept, physiological concept that happens after someone's had a brain injury. So it's basically this spreading inactivity that spreads throughout the brain. It starts in a certain focus of the brain, usually around the brain injury site, and then it spreads out to the rest of the brain. And it's been seen in seizures and epilepsy. It's also been seen in more severe traumatic brain injury. It's been seen in stroke. And it's never been seen in concussions, but that's because there's not a lot of really good preclinical animal models of concussion. And then obviously you can't really test it in someone who's had a concussion because it's not ethical in like a person. Yeah. But more recently, Russell Morton out of University of New Mexico is one of the first people to show that spreading depression actually happens in the context of concussion and also denotes severity and symptoms afterwards, meaning that in rats who suffered a concussion, who also has spreading depression, spreading depolarization, their symptoms tended to be worse afterwards. Their recovery tended to be longer afterwards. So it's like, all right, cool. So I contacted Russell and I said, hey, if I send you some CBD, like, can you test it on your on your rats?
Yeah.
And he's a great guy, and he said, yeah, sure. So we bought some CBD, and this wasn't, by the way, for anyone wondering, this wasn't CBD that you get like, out of a store like that you buy it and just go buy it and send it to him. This is like pharmaceutical grade, CBD that you have to buy. So we sent that to him. Sure enough, it, stops spreading depolarization and then improve blood flow to a certain part of the brain. We haven't gotten to the point of saying, all right, well, did that also improve severity? But I think based off of his prior research, the prediction would be that it would.
Okay. So the research is still ongoing. You're just not part of it, and the doctor is still leading that research.
So I'm still part of it. I've stopped my intensity of research in CBD because of my clinic and my clinical care stuff, but it's still in the works. It's just slowed down a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, research takes time. One thing we have seen is like it takes years. It's not over. It's not done in a year. Sometimes it takes decades to get that research data and everything to get going. So, but that's why we talked about this right before the podcast, how I'm interested more in the research side of medicine.
Right.
Yeah, I'm more clinical.
I like the daily struggle. I mean, not struggle, but more like getting to think of like complex situations and like really get to solve these issues down the road. I know it's like forever that takes it, but that's where I find the fun.
I hate patients. I want to get done with it. That's why clinical for me, I think similar to you, is like I want to see my patients, figure out what the problem is, and treat them.
Right. And to each their own. Like this sort of duality that you guys have, I have it with my colleague and friend Kevin Bickart, who's a professor here and also a neurologist, same specialty as me, also neurobehavioral. So he gets into dementia a lot too. And he's the same way. He's MD, PhD. We host a podcast together. He's MD, PhD, so he's super scientific mind, very smart guy. And I'm like more of the practical, clinical side. So it's like, hey, that concept, dub it down for me so that if I'm 5 years old, I'd be able to understand, Yeah.
And you already answered one of my other questions, but I want to kind of dive deeper into specific brain injuries. Mm-hmm. When it comes to combat and impact sports, what like innovation have you seen to prevent like brain injuries such as like CTE? or like neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, for example? Have you seen?
Unfortunately, not much is on the front of CTE and any interventions with CTE. So I think the research is still up for debate as to what is the progression of someone developing CTE from their repetitive head injuries. We know repetitive head injuries definitely contribute to developing CTE, but what are the other factors? Like, for example, we'll see a lot of headlines like, like 95 or 98% of NFL players had CTE on autopsy in this study, right?
Yeah.
And well, there's a lot of bias that goes into that because we know that those NFL players were having symptoms and they donated their brains to be able to look inside a microscope to see if they had CTE or not. So there's certainly a bias. But for example, there's other players that don't have any symptoms, didn't have a dementia when they died. And then you looked at their brain and they also had signs of CTE.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what is that? Why is that? What's happening there?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think we fully elucidated exactly what's going on with repetitive head injuries and CTE. We know it definitely contributes to it. But I think, something that we've been finding out because of the contribution of repetitive head injuries to developing CTE, there's this big movement for like banning youth tackle football.
Yeah.
Because how we're starting to measure repetitive head injuries, like you can't measure non-concussive head injuries because they happen and no symptoms happen and no one reports anything. So rather we're starting to measure in years of a specific sport played, so years of football played. So we're starting to see like if you can cut down like 4 years from someone's football career, then maybe that can be the difference between them developing CTE or not. So then that translates to people saying, hey, maybe we need to ban youth tackle football. So not high school football, but rather
youth
football, like,
elementary school
and Pop Warner and these different things. I haven't fully made up my mind on if that's the right thing or not. I think, are you learning how to tackle at Pop Warner? Probably not. I don't think that you're really learning any skills by playing tackle football in Pop Warner that you wouldn't otherwise learn playing flag football.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we can move on to the next segment.
All right. So I want to talk about your podcast mindset. You're hosting 2 podcasts. One is the Brain Sport podcast here at UCLA. Yeah. And you also got another podcast for yourself going on, the Better Brain podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
So the arc of this whole podcasting thing was we started the Brain Sport. I started the Brain Sport podcast when I was doing my fellowship in brain injury here at UCLA, and it was in response to COVID. So it was like COVID hit, and then a big mission of the fellowship that I was a part of was outreach, right? Yeah. So like, well, how can we continue our outreach despite COVID? So I was like, we can start a podcast, and they said, really? I was like, yeah, sure. Let me do it, and then you can see how it goes, and then. It started out rough. If you go look at like the first podcast ever, it was like super rough. I like looking back on it. Like let me see
just to see like
how much you've improved. Like to like visually see that. We started it, and then they believed in the Brain Sport. It's a great, fantastic program. Director's Chris Giza. He's absolutely amazing. Great mentor, and they like believed in it, and we kept doing it. And then it progressed from, interviewing people on concussions to now more brain health stuff, more brain and more mental health. And then I think we reached a point with UCLA where it was like, there was red tape involved with recording, with who we could record with who we couldn't, and stuff like that. And we decided, let's start our own thing where we don't have to worry about as much red tape, and see how it goes. And it's gone pretty well thus far. Again, I'm doing it, and then I brought in Kevin Bickart, who's like the scientific mind who adds like an entirely new scientific element to the podcast, which I think is really needed, especially when you're talking to like these really scientific minds. Like we talked to Jack Feldman, who's like, on like the short list for, winning a Nobel Peace Prize. It's like, there's an element of like, how do I like scientifically speak to this man, and not to say that, he's super down to earth and he's awesome. But I think that bringing Kevin in can speak his language a little bit better than maybe I can.
Yeah.
You know?
How has this podcasting made you a better physician in your clinical setting?
That's an excellent point. I mean, in so many ways, but just, I think, you know, you talk to people that are, you know, at the top of their field, that are kind of on the forefront of medicine, and they're telling you, you know, what is the underlying issue with a lot of these conditions that you're dealing with on, you know, a daily basis in clinic. Like, how could you not become a better physician, right? Like, we spoke to Brandon Yarnes, who's a UCLA psychiatrist, and his specialty is pain. In my clinic, I deal with brain injury, but I also deal with spine injuries too. So I'm doing like epidural, spine injections, these sorts of things, right? And I have a lot of people coming in with chronic pain. And Dr. Yarnes came on and he discussed like basically how everything starts and ends with in the brain with pain, right? Like how when you get beyond a certain point, the pain that people are still having, a significant element of the pain that people are still having is in the brain.
Yeah.
You know, like people herniate a disc, right? They keep having pain beyond like a year time period, beyond 2 years. There's a significant element that's in the brain from them just being in chronic pain, right? And then he talked about this kind of psychotherapy study that he did that's completely reversing people's chronic pain. It really begins to, and then he also talks about, and I asked him about opiates, right? Like what is opiates doing in chronic pain too? We have an opiate crisis going on right now. What is it doing? So, and then I sometimes prescribe opiates for chronic pain. And I honestly, and even on the podcast and even on here, I'll say I don't like doing it.
Yeah.
I think you ask any physician, or most physicians will say, I really prefer not to prescribe opiates.
Because it's an addiction, right? You know what?
I think it's a touchy subject, whether it's an addiction or a dependence. I think it's two different things. But I think either way, I still don't feel comfortable about making someone dependent on something that is outside of themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So he talked about like how opiates are just like completely antithetical to the concepts that we know improve resiliency and improve people's chronic pain. I was like in full agreement with him, you know? But then you take that to the clinic, then I got to take that knowledge to the clinic and like, what do I do with that knowledge?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people are coming in chronic pain, 10 out of 10, right? Am I prescribing an opiate? Am I not?
Yeah.
You know, it certainly influences my judgment now moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. You're pretty much learning. I feel like this podcast is a tool for learning and you're learning more with it.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like that's, you know, I started it because of this outreach thing. And then you do it and you're getting to talk to all these people. And I'm reaching out to like, you know, we talk about Chris Palmer.
Yeah.
We talk about Anna Lemke. Like these are like really big names in their fields. And then I'm realizing I was like, wow, I'm reaching out because I'm curious, but then I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
Right? Just like talking to them.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to translate that into like my clinical care and even my personal life and even my family life. Like, you know, it's not just being a doctor, man.
Yeah.
Like it's like all this stuff really has helped me become, I think, a more well thought and better understanding person. You know?
That's amazing and very inspiring for us because we're just starting this journey. So we're on the same way, but like we're your beginner level right now.
Yeah.
So, but no, that's amazing work you're doing.
Yeah. I think for like going into medical school, you know, like that was the same way. Like you get so laser focused.
Yeah.
Right.
You forget about everything.
You forget about everything. And like at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you're going to come out of medical school, you're going to come out of residency, you're going to be a doctor, and then you're going to like look around and say, there's so much more.
Yeah.
You know, that what I've learned is like, you got to learn how to be in the moment. And I know it's super tough when you have the kind of duties and the responsibility that you have as like a resident or a doctor, but like it can't take over your life.
Exactly.
Like you got to be able to go outside because at the end of the day, like I'm telling you, like it's going to be absolutely vital for you to learn how to step away from whatever it is that you're doing that you feel is super important. Yeah. Step back, step away, and just like have time to yourself, have time with your friends, your family, and just like decompress a little bit and then go back. And it's not about like, oh, you go back and like you perform so much better when you go back, or like, rest for 3 minutes and then go back. It's like, no, it makes what you're doing sustainable, and it helps you, continue the purpose that you feel that you have doing what you're doing.
You become more productive.
And also regulate your emotions. I think that's a really big thing. Yeah. And also great advice. Thank you so much.
And then you've interviewed a bunch of athletes and a bunch of medical professionals. What's one story that stuck with you in your head and you were like, this is why I do what I do?
From interviewing somebody? That's a good question. Were you a healthcare professional or an athlete?
Anyone.
Athlete as well.
So I think Misha Tate telling me about, and she's one of many already, athletes that talk about their psychedelic experience and how that really completely shifted their entire perspective and made them a more compassionate, caring person and a better mother, a better everything. I think really speaks to me because she's a UFC fighter and she hurts people for a living. And it's like, how that experience has completely shifted who she is, and then also how she approaches fighting. Like now she's like, her approach is mind-blowing. When you're fighting somebody, I don't know, maybe you can speak about this being a boxer, but when you're in the ring with someone, like there's a level of hatred that you need to have for that person, right? Where it's like, I don't know where you're getting the motivation to beat somebody.
It's a mindset when you get in the ring.
It's a fighter mindset.
Right. But like she was describing this new mindset of, hey, like we're both here to put on a show, and we're both going to do our best to put on a show and show everyone the skill that we have. And thank you for being in the ring with me so that we can put on a show, so that we can both do what we love to do.
Yeah.
And like,
wow.
But I don't know if that's good or bad, from a performance standpoint, like I don't know,
that often
but you never hear that, right? And it's just like, that's a really interesting, fresh perspective that I heard.
She's had a very successful career.
Right,
she's a champion of the sport. I've been watching her fights, even a long time ago when Conor McGregor and everything else was popping off. Beginning UFC. That's when she was leading in face of UFC. Amazing athlete. So having this mindset, maybe it does help you.
I think it doesn't. Personally, because when I was first starting out boxing, I had a lot of anger, and I feel like that fueled me in the ring a lot more. Sure. But with this last 2 years ago, we did a boxing camp. My mindset was changed completely. Right, I was more. I enjoyed my piece. I just felt like my whole mindset was way different. I couldn't perform as well as I used to.
For me, it was the discipline part. During that boxing camp, what we did, it was just waking up every day. You knew it sucked. Every day was tough, but after getting that thing done, you felt so much more productive. So we used to go to the boxing camp. I knew it was sucked. I did it, felt a lot better, and then I went home, studied, did everything else, did my work. I was like, wow, I never thought I would have this much time in a day.
There's something about conquering some
demon or whatever.
It's something about doing something hard at the beginning of your day that really sets your day up.
Whole day,
I think that's, you've been here. I'm sure you've been here about ice baths, right? I think that the benefit that everyone tries to say, oh, it burns fat more, or it's good for mental health, and okay, I guess norepinephrine and adrenaline and all this other scientific stuff that people like talking about to make themselves seem like they know what they're talking about, but actually they don't. I really do think that's the concept. Whatever underlies that concept is whatever, right? But it's just that concept that's important, that if you're not a scientific person, if you're looking to implement something into your regimen, that you should consider doing that. And it doesn't have to be ice bath, right? If you hate going for a walk in the morning, first thing in the morning, go and do that, right? Lean into something that you don't like doing to show yourself that you can do stuff that you don't like, and that you can keep doing that. And remember that goes.
David Goggins,
he says the same thing. It's you should do what you hate, because that would, no matter what you do after that, you'll be at least it's not as bad as that.
It's programming your mind pretty much.
And so that's the thing, right? It's programming your mind, because if you keep doing that over and over and over again, then it becomes so much easier to do things that you don't like, right? And that's what life's all about pretty much, right? It's constantly being presented with challenges that you have to work through, right? So, and it doesn't, again, David Goggins is a insane beast, right? And some people would say there's some sort of like psychopathology involved with whatever it is that he's doing because he's taking it so far.
Yeah.
But I think that it doesn't have to be like you get up and like, you know, you like run 20 miles in the morning, right? Like maybe that's good for him because that's the only thing that he finds to be difficult, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think you need to figure out what's difficult for you that's manageable, right? And then do that, right? Yeah, if an ice bath in the morning is the only thing that you find difficult and that's manageable and doable and doesn't cost that much money, then go for it, right? But it's not the ice bath. It's not this and it's not that. It's like the concept of doing something difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks more to a concept that like the more I do this podcast, the more I'm learning about. And I think this is sort of a core issue at most of the things that we're dealing with as far as chronic pain, mental health that's going on in our society today. It has to do with learning how to listen to ourselves. So I think that we've completely externalized how it is that we're supposed to feel, right? So we're not looking and listening to ourselves as to how this feels. We're checking our phones. We're looking at this. Tell me how I'm supposed to feel.
Yeah.
Right? We're doing that. We're looking at the phone. How am I supposed to feel? Because that's how that person feels. So that must mean that I need to feel like this. You're looking at the news, right? How am I supposed to feel about this person, right? Just instead of just taking a second and just listening to yourself, right? Is this right for me? Is this not right for me? I think we've completely lost the ability to do that.
Yeah.
I think we've completely externalized how to listen to ourselves and then also what to do about whatever issue it is that you're having, right? So like, that's why this like protocolizing shit has come about so much, right? Because you're not listening to yourself. You're listening to somebody else saying, this is the problem that you have. And then when it comes to solving that problem, obviously you're not going to listen to yourself as to how you're supposed to solve that problem because you're not even listening to yourself as to what the problem is.
Yeah.
So you're looking outside and you're saying, okay, tell me how to fix the problem that you told me that I have, right? And they're saying, yes, well, actually you gotta fucking, you know, I don't know, like take this supplement or that supplement and everything will get better, right? It's like, how can this person that's not you, that has no idea how you feel, has no idea the kind of previous experiences that you've undergone throughout your entire life, tell you what is right for you?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's mind blowing. It's bonkers. And I think that how you resolve that issue is like you figure out how to listen to yourself. And how I've come to learn that is because I've talked to nutrition experts. We've talked to nutrition experts, Kevin and I, on the Zoe podcast. Tim Spector, Sarah Berry, a bunch of good advice. But at the core of it was like, hey, you got to listen to what's right for you. And that's their goal. It's like personalized nutrition advice based off of like your microbiome and stuff. But at the core of it is like just listening to what works for your body, like when you should eat, what you should be eating. And this is kind of what you listen for in terms of your body cues. Did that. Mental health, mental illness, same thing. Listening to yourself, listening to your body. We talked to Brandon Yarns about it. And really at the core of the issue is like listening to yourself in terms of your emotions, being able to listen to your emotions and then being able to control and regulate them. What is right for you in regards to controlling those emotions and regulating those feelings? Exercise, same thing, listening to yourself in regards to how much exercise is the right exercise with a framework that studies show improves brain health and reduces the risk of dementia. So, listening to yourself.
All right. So just to end it off, Dr. Rafie, thank you so much for being here with us and giving us some great advices. Because, I mean, everything you said, like you said, you get to learn a lot of things from these guests that you bring in. That was what happened today.
Yeah, 100%.
So we learned a lot.
I learned a lot, yeah.
I appreciate it. And thank you for letting us use your studio again. This was great.
And again, this is episode 7 of The Dreamers. If you really enjoy this episode, like and subscribe and follow. And we'll also share Dr. Rafie's all Instagram and all his podcast links in the description. If you guys want to follow for more, we're having a lot more content coming soon. And thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Dream big.
Oh.